Good morning, y'all. Welcome to the Dynasty Playbook, Dynasty FF's dedicated podcast. I'm your host, Drew. You can find me on Reddit at EAF_Marine and on Twitter at DrewDotsonNFL. With me is my co-host, Dave. You can find Dave on Reddit at MTux96 and on Twitter at DynastyDaveII. Dave, I missed you last week. How you doing this week?
Pretty good this week. Actually woke up this morning, so that's a start.
I know when you're old like that, waking up in the morning is an exciting thing. It's another day. Wow, you giving me the stink eye right now, huh, bud?
Yes, I am.
Oh. I can hear myself. Oh, that's my fault. I actually left the video up myself. That's my bad.
What was your YouTube video tab?
Yeah, I did. It's the first time I've done it to myself. Way to go, me. So let's go ahead and hop right into the show. We didn't really have a whole ton of Dynasty-related news. Deflating balls isn't really Dynasty-related news, if you ask me. And
Deflategate, Texgazi, or whatever, not really important to Dynasty.
No.
Has no bearing on us unless they decide to banish Belichick or Brady from the NFL. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. There's no smart conversation to be had about this, and
it's not relevant.
No, it's not.
And not until they decide to ban Belichick or Brady, and I don't see that happening. So it's not fantasy relevant.
No. Legitimately, the worst thing they're looking at is losing a draft pick, and that means potentially one less player you might draft off the Patriots roster.
From round 4, round 5?
Exactly. Also, there's the Pro Bowl today, so who cares? Honestly, I don't think I've watched the Pro Bowl in like 3 or 4 years.
I haven't watched it since I was a kid, so.
Oh wow! So back when it was in black and white.
Back when it was only on radio.
How was O.J. Simpson?
Oh, that was after my time.
Fair enough. All right, well, let's go ahead and just move straight into our college player discussion for the week. This week we got Sammie Coates, who's a junior wide receiver coming out of Auburn. Dave, you want to go ahead and tell me your initial impressions of Sammie Coates?
My initial impression, just a little background on how I've been doing this viewing is basically right before the show. I typically just watch a few games. A lot of these players I haven't seen before, so this is kind of a first impression of what I've seen on him. I did watch the parts. Okay, going back onto Sammie Coates now. But with Sammie Coates, I did watch the plays that he did in LSU, and the 2014 LSU game, and I would say I'm actually impressed with this kid. I do like his hands. He's been able to catch it with defenders on him. One thing I did notice is he gave up a few times. There's a few passes that if he just reached out to grab the ball, he would have caught it. I think it's a laziness factor, maybe. I think that he might have to deal with in the pros. Another thing I noticed, I went back and watched the Arkansas 2013 game, and I did notice that he had a lot of good running blocks, which I think a lot of wide receivers don't do, and I think that's an added bonus to Sammie Coates, where he will be involved in the game, and the NFL teams will actually want to play with that blocking skills. But overall, I did like the kid. I like the yards after catch. He has some speed on him to get away from defenders trying to tackle him. But like I said, the one thing that I did notice, he does have a laziness factor to him, where he just doesn't try as hard as he can at times.
Yeah. Your point about him being, an excellent blocker. I don't know I can't remember if it was the Arkansas game or the Texas A&M game where you see him throw one of the defenders off him and just slam him to the ground. He's extremely strong. And you can see that a lot in just him shedding blocks, not shedding blocks, but shedding tackles. Um, and he's very good at making catches in traffic, like you said. My main problem with Sammie is, this is a guy that's rumored he's going to run in the 4-3 somewhere, but very rarely do you see him gain any, if you know, any separation, even on deep routes. Even when it's just supposed to be straightaway speed, he's not getting almost any separation. So he's still having to make contested catches. So that I can see that being, a lack of effort, or he's letting the receivers jam him up, and that's causing him to not be able to get off the line as quick. Um, he's hyper athletic. He's extremely athletic. If he can maximize his talents, he's there's no reason he can't succeed in the NFL. Um, he has problems tracking the ball in the air. You'll see somewhere, if it's a it's a right shoulder throw, and he's supposed to just you know peek at it and catch it, but he loses it in the air and he just swings at it and nothing. Um, but this is a guy that some people are mocking in the late first round of the NFL draft. If he goes there, he's going to go higher in your rookie drafts. Let him take him there. If the NFL lets him fall farther and he falls into the late second or even kind of the mid second of your rookie drafts, I'd be interested in taking him there just for the potential upside. But I've seen him go late first, early second of some rookie mocks. I'm not interested there. There's too many holes in his game. Right now, to me, he's a glorified deep target. You got anything else you want to add about him, Dave?
Actually, I did like watching him. I think the laziness factor, the lack of effort, is probably gonna get him. I'd like to see how he does in some preseason games first. I think. But I think this guy is gonna be somewhat on my radar. I don't know how far, but it depends on who else is available. Always, of course. But I was kind of impressed by his play, except for the lack of effort on his part on some plays.
Yeah. Actually, I completely lied about the week in review. This week was the Senior Bowl, and Sammie Coates was apparently showed fairly well at the Senior Bowl. So I'm going to be interested to see how he does in that game today, and I'll be interested to read some of the reports coming out of there for this week. Apparently, he showed really well.
And when is the Senior Bowl today, or is that tomorrow? When is the Senior Bowl?
I want to say it's today. We'll find out real quick.
That would be a good tool to watch. Just watch the Senior Bowl, because a lot of those players will be going to the NFL, and a lot of them will have an impact on Dynasty. Might be a good tool for people to watch. And just keep an eye on players.
Exactly. It's just like the bowl games. Yeah, actually, the Senior Bowl starts in less than 3 hours from right now. I mean, people are going to be listening to this later, and they're already going to miss it.
But you can always go back and watch it on the internet here and there.
Exactly.
But
go ahead.
I was going to say that's one thing I need to start doing more. I need to watch more college ball, I think. More tools like that is available for everyone to use, and we should use it. We should be doing that research.
Exactly. There's draftbreakdown.com. They tape for days. Anybody you want to watch. And if you don't feel confident in analyzing tape by yourself, Matt Waldman does an RSP film room where he takes another respected name in the industry, and they sit there and they break down tape from a player. They point out issues with his game, where he succeeds, and I watch them all the time. I love them, and I watch tape by myself, and it's an excellent tool. So take a look at it. I don't know. I'm also a huge Matt Waldman fanboy, so I'll plug him every chance I get.
Yeah,
I
just
think,
another tool out there for us Dynasty players to use. Nothing wrong with using these tools. It's good research for anyone who wants to do the research and get better at playing Dynasty and fantasy football.
yep, especially when they're free. That's one of my favorite words in the English language.
Well,
um,
unless you get, I think it's Waldman who does that one report that you have to pay like I think $20, but I hear a lot of good things about that though. I hear
yeah,
a lot of it being worth the $20 to begin with, and it's probably getting a deal on it anyways if you're paying $20 for it, from my understanding.
yeah, he does the rookie scouting portfolio every year, and it's $20 if you pre-order it, which it's available for pre-order now. It's like 17 or 18. Uh, and it goes extremely in depth on way more prospects than you probably care to know about. It's absolutely worth the money. Um, if I could only spend money on one thing fantasy related a year besides league dues, it would be that. Um, I feel like he should be paying us money for advertising.
Maybe we should hit him up and say, hey, we're promoting your stuff here. We want money.
I do it for free anyways. He's contributed so much to the community for technically so little profit on his part is worth it.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind we're also here to point out things for our listeners to actually get better, and that's a tool that's out there that more people probably need to be utilizing that will help them. So it's good to promote it here as well because it's going to help you out.
Exactly. And I think we can go ahead and move on to our submitted questions of the week. And the first one comes from our boy Barles. He says, we haven't been loving IDP enough lately. He says, how about some IDP love? Nothing crazy. Maybe just give us our top 5 defensive ends, linebackers, and safeties. And Dave, I'll let you start off with your opinion on safeties.
My opinion on safeties is I haven't been really delving too much into that position. Mainly because I've been holding the safeties I've had, unless one really pops up, and that doesn't really happen too much for me. There's too many variables, I think, in that position. Not as much as the cornerback position. As you can see, we're not even dealing with the cornerback position because that's just useless. You can just pick them off the waiver wire for the most part. But safeties, I actually like your list a lot. A lot of players I didn't really look at just because I don't own them. But I think with safety positions, I think you do make a lot of good points on those. So I'm going to let you delve more into the safety position than what I am because I really don't know much safeties too much. Which is the one issue with IDPs is it's all over the place and a lot of it does depend on your scoring.
Yeah.
But it's there's always good bases to go from. So I'm going to go with your base right here, Drew.
All right. And I agree. If you cornerbacks, there's no point even ranking them. They're essentially the kickers of the IDP world. Um, but we'll go ahead and move on to safeties. My number one safety for Dynasty right now is Morgan Burnett. This guy is a monster. He's a tackle machine. He seems like he's got a nose for the ball, especially on a defense with a lot of players that are kind of lackluster. So he gets a lot more opportunities to make plays. Um, my number 2 is Jonathan Cyprian out of Jacksonville. This guy's young, he's explosive, everything you want from your starting safeties. Most of these guys are going to be strong safety. These guys are going to be more likely to rack up your tackles. Number 3 is Harrison Smith, free safety out of Minnesota. He's a perfect fit for Zimmer's defense. And he's looked extremely impressive since he's gotten on the field. Number 4 is Barry Church. Barry Church for me he's been an impressive player, but his situation is extremely beneficial to him as well. And I don't see it getting better much quicker either. That entire defense needs a huge infusion of talent, and he's going to continue to benefit from that. He's going to continue to rack up tackles at an extremely ridiculous rate. And then number 5 is Eric Weddle. Now, normally I try and stay away from the older players for my rankings, just because I'd rather not invest in an asset that I think is failing. But this guy is just too impressive and too much of a monster to not have ranked as a top player. This guy is just a monster.
And he's been like that for a number of years now.
For a hot minute.
Yeah.
And then I decided, along with these top 5, that I was going to pick a sleeper from each category too, and I went with Brock Vereen for the safety position. He's a safety out of Chicago. Now, this is a guy who, as much as it is, he's fairly talented, he also has a great chance to improve. He started the last 3 games. He's getting great snaps the last 3 games of the season on a defense that has nowhere to go but up this next season. He has a great chance to increase his value tenfold in this next season, and he's not going to cost you anything. He's available on a ton of waiver wires right now. And granted, most of your waiver wires are going to be shut down, but I guarantee you could probably get him for a 6th-round rookie pick this year. Why not? He's worth the spot.
Yeah.
And that'll be it for my safety position. Dave, you want to go ahead? Let's go ahead and move on to our linebackers, and I'll let you go ahead and open up with the linebackers.
Yeah, I'll start with the linebackers. I think the linebackers is pretty. It's pretty more close, just because a lot of it's the common thread of what linebackers to pick. A lot of them are going to be the middle linebackers, like any IDP league. You're going to get the middle linebacker, which is going to see most of the tackles. Although if you're in big play leagues, you might see more of the power pass rushing linebackers get into that group as well. I think a lot of it is going to be right now. It's going to be Clucci. Excuse me if I'm mispronouncing his last name. But what was it?
Kuechly.
Kuechly? Okay. Yeah, I knew I was going to mispronounce that one. But Kuechly, tackle machine. That's pretty much the linebackers you're going to look at. I like Lavonte David a lot out of Tampa Bay. He's just been good since he's entered the league in a few years. Another one that really impressed me this year was the rookie C.J. Mosley. I think he has a lot of promise, and I have him on my top 5 list. He's not even a sleeper in that list. I think he's going to be an IDP star moving forward as well. A few other ones I have on that list is Kiko Alonso. I know a lot of people he's kind of in the sleeping mode right now just because he had an injury this year and he hasn't played. But I think going forward, I think he's still going to be there. I don't think this injury is going to keep him down. The only issue is Buffalo Bills is undergoing a coaching change, which that might hurt him or help him. I don't know. We just don't know yet how they're going to utilize the defensive players there. But I think Kiko Alonso would still be an IDP star in the league.
That's fair. He's in my top 5 as well. Now, my number 1 and 2 are switched from yours. I'd take Lavonte David over Luke Kuechly. I agree. Kuechly's a tackle machine. I think it was last season he set the record for most tackles in a game. I have to watch this guy against playing against my Saints every year, and he's a stud. And if you want to take him number 1, I'm not going to argue with you. I think Lavonte David has that same tackle upside, but I think he has more of a nose for the big play. I think that gives him the slight advantage on upside. It's almost a 1A, 1B situation for me. Both of them are amazing linebackers, and they're both super young. These are guys that can anchor your linebacker position for a hot minute. My number 3 is Vontaze Burfict. He's had some injury concerns this year, but I'm willing to overlook that. This guy is another outside linebacker. He's got a nose for the big play. Puts up good tackle numbers consistently on a defense that have solid linebackers, but nobody that's going to do well enough to steal work from him. My number 4 is a guy that, I consistently see people underrank him, and I don't understand why, and that's Bobby Wagner, linebacker out of Seattle. There's nothing I don't like about this guy's game. I think he's going to put up huge tackle numbers. Even being injured, he still was an excellent IDP starter this year, and I think he's only going to get better. And Kiko Alonso was my number 5. I don't care that he was injured all year. He's still young. He still busted out into the league his rookie year, and I still think he has a ton of upside for the future. And my sleeper was Manti Te'o. He plays the inside linebacker position. I think he showed a lot of good flashes this year, and I think you can get him fairly cheap. That's all I need to say about him. I think he has a good chance to improve a good bit next year, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on him because he's not getting that much hype. And I think that about covers it for the linebacker. Do you have anything else you want to throw in before we move on?
I think Bobby Wagner was a good pick there. I think he just flies under a lot of people's radars. Flew underneath mine. A lot of good reasons to listen to these podcasts and use the tools out there, I guess. But moving on, I think we're going to probably move on to the defensive end category now.
Works for me.
Yeah, which number 1 is probably going to be the obvious choice here. I think everyone knew who this is probably going to be. Guy who actually lines up as tight end and catches touchdowns once in a while as well. And I also hear he's actually kicking field goals now too. J.J. Watt.
Yeah, I saw that.
Have you heard of that guy?
Yeah, I think I've heard of him once in a while.
I think that's going to be the obvious pick right there. As you could, I don't see anyone else not picking him number 1. I think most people are going to say J.J. Watt's their number 1 pick, even maybe getting into the IDPs at all. I mean, he's probably going to be the number 1 IDPs people look at. But definitely J.J. Watt. My list was actually short because I guess I didn't do enough research on defensive ends. I'm actually going to steal a few years. I totally forgot about Chandler Jones on the Patriots. Actually, a person I actually own actually picked him up as a rookie. Chandler Jones is a good defensive end to look at for teams who actually need the defensive end. That's pretty much going to be my short list. I know I also put Jason Pierre-Paul, but he's getting up there in age. But I think, especially in big play leagues, I think he'll be a decent pickup for most people. As far as my
surprised to know how young JPP is.
How old is JPP?
I think he's 26.
Oh, so he's pretty young.
Yeah, he came into the league super young. He's 26.
Oh wow. So maybe my age radar is off right now.
A lot of people think he's old, so I wouldn't feel bad. We actually had a conversation about it in the league chat today, and a lot of people thought he was old. So yeah. Don't feel bad. Yeah, he's 26.
Wow, he doesn't seem like he's 26. He seems like he's been in the league for like a decade or so already.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll definitely keep him up higher on my list now, and since he's younger. But my wild card pick, like I said, my list is extremely short on defensive ends. But my wild card sleeper pick is pretty much a wild card. He's a rookie this year. He plays for Dallas, which is Demarcus Lawrence. I know during the regular season he was pretty quiet this year, although he did step it up in the playoffs, which I think moving forward is something I like to see. I think moving forward, I think he's going to become more active on the in Dallas, and I do like Demarcus Lawrence a lot.
That's funny. You actually stole the guy I was going to make as my sleeper. so I had to go out and find another one. So, I agree. J.J. Watt is clearly the number one overall defensive end right now. I was huge on Robert Quinn last year, and he was my number one defensive end for IDP, and I think I'm not down on Robert Quinn, but I don't think anybody can not be up on J.J. Watt after another spectacular season. I think that was his third 20 sack season in a row. I don't think any player has ever done that. But yeah, like I said, my number 2 is Robert Quinn. When you play on a defensive line with Aaron Donald and wow, I feel terrible right now. I just forgot old boy's name, and he used to play for LSU. Oh wow, I'm a shitty fan. It's gonna come to me. No dead air.
Whatever. Move on.
I have to look it. I see. I have to know it. I have to look it up. So we're gonna find it real quick. So everybody just has to.
Well, don't feel bad. I completely forgot about Chandler Jones, and he's actually on a lot of my IDP league teams too. So don't feel too bad.
He's actually good, so I don't feel that bad, I guess. But yeah, there's Michael Brockers at defensive tackle as well. They have a studly defensive line just in general, and you're not gonna have to deal with double coverage. Oh no, I was thinking of Brockers. Chris Long was the other defensive end.
How Long's son?
I think he's his nephew.
Nephew?
Yeah, some of the Longs are his sons, some of them are his nephews. I don't know. I'm not interested in the Longs.
Matthew's family is hard to follow.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the Longs genealogy. Moving on, my number 3 is Chandler Jones. I think Chandler Jones did himself a huge service this year, and he's moved himself into the same tier as Robert Quinn. This guy, he's been amazing this year.
He's been amazing since he came into the league.
Yeah, he's improved every single year, and he was the number 3 last year coming into the year, and I feel like if it wasn't J.J. Watt and Robert Quinn over him, there's no way he doesn't move up. But there's nowhere to move him up to.
Nope.
If you wanted to rank Chandler Jones above Robert Quinn, I could even see that, honestly. Chandler Jones had such a good season, even though he was injured. When he was on the field, he was a beast. My number 4 is actually a guy that might surprise some people, and that's Ziggy Ansah. I think he made a huge step in terms of development this year. You saw a lot more improved technique this year. And I think just in terms of as a pass rusher and as a run stopper, he's improved in all aspects of his game. He came out as an athletic freak, and they were hoping that they could improve on that, and he clearly has. I think he's going to be a stud for years to come. He's super young. I'm all about it. And my number 5, I actually had a toss-up on. I discussed it in league chat, and that's why we had JPP up on there. Mine was between Muhammad Wilkerson, JPP, and Calais Campbell. I lean towards Wilkerson and JPP, a little bit of the edge towards Wilkerson, and I know some people like Calais Campbell better. I ended up taking Wilkerson over JPP by a hair. Wilkerson, even in a 3-4 defense, was able to produce some serious numbers, especially in 2013. And there's also the possibility he could be moving into a 4-3 defense, which would be huge for his IDP production. I think the guys... I don't think you could go wrong with either of those guys, honestly. Hell, if you wanted to go with Sheldon Richardson there, I'm not as big a fan of it, but I can see it. That guy was making huge plays in a 3-4 defense as a defensive end and a defensive tackle as well. That's not stuff you normally see in a 3-4 defense. So, you know, the IDP world getting kind of turned on its head right now, honestly.
The IDP world is always turning on its head. Each year, the list is it's too variable a lot of times, which a lot of people gets turned off by, just because one year so and so is a star and next year he's off the map. That's one thing I got to keep up with IDP is all those changes, all the defensive changes, teams going from 3-4 to 4-3 and 4-3 to 3-4 and all that, and it's just a lot of changes that happen in the defensive side that changes the IDP world, and it's always a constant change.
Yep. I mean, and it's the same thing with offense. You just have to be aware of everything. You have to be aware of the changes. You have to make adjustments. And we'll finish off that question with my sleeper, which was Coney Ealy, who was I want to say he was a first-round pick he was a second-round pick for the Carolina Panthers because Kelvin Benjamin was their first-round pick. I think if they don't re-sign Greg Hardy, he's obviously got a chance to start. And even if they do, I think he has a chance to move up that depth chart with the way that Johnson's been playing. I think you can snag him up pretty cheap, and I think it's worth a shot. And that'll wrap up our IDP ranking. Do you have anything else you wanna hit on before we move on?
That's pretty much it. I think we covered everything. We even covered a little bit more into how the IDP changes a lot, which I think you deal with on the offensive side, but I think it's really pronounced in the IDP side of things. Just because teams going from 4-3 to 3-4, it changed a lot of the defensive ends as well as linebackers at times, which is one thing players need to keep an eye on is teams going from a 3-4 to 4-3. Maybe look at those defensive ends on those teams that are moving to the 4-3s. If you're looking for a sleeper, those are probably the players you want to look at.
Yeah, that's fair. And we'll go ahead and move on to our next question, which is from Bacon Bucks. And he says he wants to hear our opinions on the second-year wide receivers. Watkins, Evans, Beckham, Benjamin, Cooks, Robinson, Matthews, Moncrief, Lee, Adams, and Bryant. In both standard and PPR, how do you feel about their outlook over the next 3 years, considering both talent and situation? So, an extremely involved question. Let's go ahead and just kick it off. Let's just do it one by one, I guess.
Well, first of all, I will say one thing. Standard PPR, I really don't care the differentiate. I really don't care to really focus on that because basically, if you're starting PPR, you're still going to be a star in standard. You're still most likely going to be looking at the same wide receivers. A few of them might increase just because they catch more, but in the end, I think you just look at wide receivers without looking at standard PPR. You could maybe make a few notes here and there, maybe focus a little bit more on PPR, but I'm not going to really focus on that as much as what wide receivers do I like?
I agree. There's actually I read an excellent article over the off season that there is a very small window of the wide receiver community that their value actually changes drastically from PPR to standard. I think out of last year, the only one who significantly changed his value was Kendall Wright. I don't think any of them here are going to have this significant value change. I know some people would argue that Cooks will be, kind of this PPR back. I don't think so. I think he was on his way to a 1,000-yard season, even without the, and that's a fantasy producer without PPR, if you ask me. So let's go ahead and kick it off with Sammy Watkins. I think well, you didn't talk about it because you weren't there, but I talked about him last week about how I think that despite the system, I think he's still going to be a fantasy producer. I think he's got too much talent not to be. He's got too much talent to be held down by a system.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the overall impression on him. Is that he's still going to be a star. It's just a matter of just how big. If they get a good QB in Buffalo, I think he's going to be a bigger star than what he can be right now. But I think Watkins is still a member of any team that would be produce. But I think that's overall consensus. I think he's going to be a star no matter what. It's just the Buffalo situation is a little rough right now.
Yeah, I agree. But I think it doesn't really matter. Watkins is going to be a starting wide receiver for you, regardless. Even if EJ Manuel's starting, it tapers. You have to taper your expectations a little bit, but he's still got a tremendous amount of upside. Moving on to Evans. What's that?
I was going to say, just hope that Buffalo gets a better QB, then you got even a better star in your hands.
Yeah, pretty much. Moving on to Evans. I think this season we saw Evans' floor. I think they played most of the season without an offensive coordinator. They played with QB controversy in that they couldn't decide which QB sucked less. I think his situation can go nowhere but up. They have a number 1 overall pick, which means they can get a quarterback that's better than Josh McCown. ASJ is going to get better next to him. Well, not next to him, but in addition to him, it's going to it's going to help him, not get completely thrashed and covered. He's a first-round startup pick. He's going to be a fantasy stud, and that's all there is to it. If he can produce the ridiculous numbers he did with, essentially a terrible offense, then imagine what he can produce with a competent quarterback. Dave, anything to add?
Nothing to add or take away. Evans is one of those players is just going to be a star. And I think we'll see more from him. Moving on, I guess we can. Odell Beckham's the next on the list from the Giants. Everyone remembers him from the catch. I think he's going to improve. I don't think we've really seen his ceiling yet, although it's probably close. But I think if you pick him first in the startups, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think he's going to be a star moving forward, even with Cruz coming back. I really don't think Cruz is going to be a factor anymore, especially after the injury. It was an ugly injury to begin with. But I do like Beckham a lot. The one thing that scares me is how long is Eli Manning going to be a Giant? He's getting up there, and I think eventually the Giants are going to be a worse QB team going forward unless they find someone to replace Manning.
Yeah, that's true. And that, I think, and even if they lose Eli, then he's essentially in the same situation as Sammie is, and even at that point, I'm not that concerned about it. I think Beckham will still produce, even if. Hey, who's backing him up? Zach Dysert? Yeah, I'm not. Even if he's the one throwing the ball, I'm not that concerned. Moving on, we got Kelvin Benjamin, who we've hated on him a fair amount.
Yeah, I think we beat a dead horse on that one. Yeah. I don't like Benjamin. I know a lot of people like him because he's right now the only wide receiver on that team, and that's kind of why I think his numbers are up where they are. A lot of people see him as just the garbage time wide receiver point leader. He still has to work on his hands. He's too much of a body catcher, which I think in the long run is going to hurt him. I see a lot of wide receivers being claimed as a body catcher. They really never lose that. They always have that with them. And moving forward, I do think Carolina is going to draft another wide receiver and pick up some maybe off the free agency, which is going to lower Benjamin's value. And I think he will actually be shown to what he is not really a star in the fantasy world.
Yeah, I agree. I think even with the touchdown upside, I think he's probably gonna be looking at maybe a low wide receiver 2 ceiling. I'm kind of on that garbage time look. Not so much that it's more because he's had difficulty catching in traffic. He's had difficulty catching uncontested catches, which to me is a huge negative, and not a good sign. But he can improve. I'm not buying into him, but
Prove us wrong.
exactly. I'm not saying it's impossible that he improves, because if he gets better, then if he improves on what he's already doing, then there's no reason he can't put up, high-end wide receiver 2 numbers. But as from what we've seen now, I'm not confident. Moving on to Brandon Cooks. Dave, I'm going to go ahead and let you take the con on this one, so we don't have to listen to me rant on my biased opinion.
Oh, there's nothing wrong listening to you rant on your biased opinion, because it's actually, I mean, even though his bias is probably on the mark, I know Brandon Cooks at the end of the season wasn't there because he was injured, but I think he showed a lot of promise this year, and a group of awesome receivers. It's kind of, he probably came at the wrong time because all the other wide receivers kind of overshadowing him, along with Matthews. They're just kind of overshadowed with the Odell Beckhams, the Evans, the Watkins. I think he's going to be a star. I think he's probably going to be like looking at the upside wide receiver 2, maybe getting into the wide receiver 1 slot. I think if you own him, he's a good player to have on your team, because he's going to produce for you, especially in that New Orleans Saints offense.
Yeah.
Especially if you know how to use him.
Yeah. Hopefully Sean Payton changes up his plan for Cooks. You can't be taking a guy with 4.3 speed and putting him on 3 and 4 yard outs. Give him some deep targets once in a while, especially when Drew Brees' deep ball accuracy has been its best as it has been in years. This is a guy, I think he's going to be a PPR stud. I think he's going to, especially in PPR, he's going to be very consistent for you. And I think I agree. I think you're looking at wide receiver 2 numbers with the possibility of low end wide receiver 1 numbers. And I think we can go ahead and move on to Allen Robinson, wide receiver out of Jacksonville. I think he showed a lot of upside before he got injured as well. He was clearly looking like Bortles' favorite target. Looked every bit the part of a wide receiver 1. I have a huge amount of optimism for his future going forward, and I'd be buying him up every opportunity I got. If they can get an offensive line around Bortles and give him more time to throw, I think Robinson's going to be a huge fantasy asset for you.
Are you jumping aboard the hype train of Allen Robinson then?
I've been conducting the hype train. Get out of here.
Yeah, I like Allen Robinson a lot too. I think he's going to fall off a lot of people's radar just because of the injury, and he didn't play the last part of the season. A lot of people look at what have you done for me lately. I think that's going to be wrong to look at Robinson that way. I think it's, if he's out there, try to buy him. See if people will sell him for cheap just because he's been injured. I won't be selling him cheap personally, but I do like Robinson a lot. He's shown, when he's on the field, he showed a lot of promise, even with a few other rookies that shined on that team as well. I mean, you also have what's his name, Allen Hurns, who was undrafted free rookie that showed some promise as well on that team.
Yep.
But moving forward, I think Allen Robinson would be a good pickup. I actually own him as well as Hurns on my main Dynasty league, and I'm definitely going to be owning Robinson for a while, and I think he's going to produce numbers for you.
Yeah, I agree, and I wouldn't say that I was jumping on the Robinson hype train. I invested in him, coming out. I liked him coming out of Penn State. I didn't really care where he landed. When he landed in Jacksonville behind Marquise Lee, I loved that as a buy low opportunity because people who liked Lee were going to not be as interested, and it was kind of dropped his value a little bit. I was able to snag him up at like 202 in some leagues, 111. I snagged him in a good many leagues. Besides Cooks, he's probably the rookie I ended up getting the most of in my drafts. Um, but moving on from Robinson, we can go on to Jordan Matthews, who is another one of my favorite rookies out of this year. Was showing a lot in this year. I think he's got a huge amount of upside going forward. I think he's taken a little bit of time to adjust to Chip Kelly's offense, and I think he's done well. I think he's shown a lot of flashes, especially with Sanchez, who he had time to get comfortable with, and I think as he continues to develop, he's got that wide receiver one potential, like most of these rookies do. Surprisingly enough, it's ridiculous. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the quarterback situation in Philadelphia. There are rumors that Foles is on the trade block. There's rumors that they're trying to get Mariota. Regardless of what happens, Chip Kelly is going to maximize the talent of the offensive players around him. So I'm not extremely concerned. If Macklin leaves, I'm still not concerned. I think he can produce whether Macklin's there or not.
I think if Macklin leaves, he might actually get a boost, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it both ways. If Macklin's there, then Macklin draws coverage. But if Macklin's gone, then Matthews gets more targets.
So, I mean, it's a win-win situation with Matthews. I like him a lot as well. I drafted him high. I actually drafted him above your Cooks. But I did see a lot of promise in him. Not as good as I wanted, but he's just a rookie. You got to temper your expectations at times. I did like a lot from what I've seen with Matthews.
Yep, and Matthews was one of those guys that we knew was gonna need some development and some time to adjust to the league. And I think we saw those steps that we wanted to see, and that was enough for me at least. And we'll go ahead and move on to our next guy, Dante Moncrief, and I'll let you go ahead and kick this one off, Dave.
Dante Moncrief is an interesting situation in Indianapolis. I know right now you have Reggie Wayne on the other side, but I think he's going to be gone, so that's pretty much a given. Moncrief, I think, is going to be the player to step up in his spot, and he's going to get a lot of targets in Indianapolis. I did see a lot of things that I liked from Moncrief this year. But overall, I think he's one of the. It's kind of hard to say because it's like all these other good wide receivers in this class. He's kind of like who do you raise right above and who. But I like Moncrief a lot as well. It's kind of hard not to like his game.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's got great upside. I think he has the highest amount of upside out of any wide receiver on the Colts roster, except for maybe a young Reggie Wayne.
And he's not going to be there much longer because he's getting up there, and he's probably thinking about retiring after the season.
Yeah. Granted, he has a lot more development to do before he's going to have more upside than Hilton. Right now, Hilton offers more fantasy upside for the present, but I think in the long term, Moncrief has more upside if he develops. He's looked good in the postseason. There's been some issues with his game, but there's also been some positives. He needs to improve his route tree, but that's something they can work on. I think he was another one of those guys coming out of Ole Miss that they needed to see development out of, because there were a lot of parts of his games that were very raw. And I think we've seen some of that development that we wanted to see. So I think we can move on from him. I want to go ahead and hit Devontae Adams next, who's another guy we saw a ton of out of in the playoffs.
Yes.
And the biggest thing I saw out of him in the playoffs that I was so stoked to see is, for the first time, he started making people miss, and he was getting yards after the catch, which was huge for his game. He impressed me a lot during the playoffs. And if Cobb's gone, he's almost immediately a wide receiver 1 upside.
He had a lot of impressive games in the playoffs, and he was just some of those missed tackles were just completely awesome. He really impressed me on those too, and I know a lot of people saw that they're impressed as well. And he's just shown his game up in the playoffs, and hopefully we see more of that in the regular season moving forward.
Hopefully they don't re-sign Cobb and he doesn't get buried for the next 3 years while we wait for Jordy Nelson to retire. That would break my heart, I'm telling you. Next guy I'll move on to is Marquise Lee, who, he kind of got a resurgence in hype and value due to the lack of Allen Robinson in Jacksonville. I'm still not sold on him. If you have him, I would view now as your secondary chance to sell him. I think he's going to be battling out with Allen Hurns for the second, for that number 2 wide receiver position. And I think Allen Hurns has a real good chance to beat him. I think the only reason Lee will have a better chance is draft position, because the front office has more invested in him. But I think Hurns is legitimately the better wide receiver.
I think Hurns this year showed a lot more than what Lee has, and a lot of people had a lot of hype coming out of Marquise Lee, and I think a lot of the people who didn't like Lee were pretty much proven right this year. I don't think Lee really shown as much as he should, and I think Allen Hurns beat him out. And Allen Hurns was a undrafted free agent.
Yeah, I think Hurns has showed a lot more in terms of effort, in terms of drive, and that to me is enough. Lee just seemed to not care, and that was a big issue with a lot of people.
Yep.
And we'll go ahead and move on to the last guy that he asked about, and that's Martavis Bryant out of Seattle. Not Seattle. I was thinking Steelers, STL, and I heard Seattle, which isn't even the right acronym. That's St. Louis. My brain's just entirely not with me today. Out of Pittsburgh.
Yes, Pittsburgh.
I'm going to let you go ahead, and I'm going to collect my thoughts for a minute.
When I saw the draft, I was watching the draft, and I saw the Pittsburgh draft this fellow. I'm like, I like watching the games on Martavis, whatever Bryant.
Really, you're gonna say his name wrong?
2 times, but yeah, Bryant. I like his game. I think in Pittsburgh he has a lot of value there. Moving forward, I think he's going to be on par to where a lot of these rookies are. I think with Antonio Brown there and Bryant, I think they're both going to be fantasy relevant, and I do like a lot of Bryant, and I'm going to probably try to pick him up here and there.
That's fair. I think Martavis is going to have he's not going to have consistent fantasy value. I see his fantasy value being highly touchdown dependent, just because he doesn't get consistent amount of receptions. He's going to be very reliant on the big play. Yeah. I think he's going to be a lot more valuable as a football player than he is a fantasy player. But, I mean, if you're playing him as your wide receiver 3 or 4, especially if it's like a wide receiver 4 or 5, that's a hell of a lot of upside for a wide receiver 4 or 5. And especially with what you paid to get him, I can't hate on that.
I definitely think he has a lot of promising aspects to it, and it's just a matter of just how they work him into the play system, which I think they're going forward. I think they're going to put more into the game system.
Yeah, I mean, if they utilize him in more ways, I think he's perfectly capable of producing in that offense. And I mean, I'm not selling him. I'm not trying to offload him real quick right now because I mean that offense is produced. Excuse me. That offense is really producing right now, and I think, I mean, Big Ben almost threw for 5,000 yards this season, and Brown and Bell can't catch all of them.
No.
So Bryant could be a huge beneficiary of that. We had one more submitted question that we got. It was in the posted thread of the video, and it comes from Alex Kimball. And he asked, how do we feel about his bids on Julio, Odell Beckham, and Mike Evans in the auction league that he and I are currently involved in? There's actually a number of people on the subreddit that are involved in it. Sticky Z, Barles, Gabe and Saul, iRabbit. There's a bunch of people. And it's a $1,000 budget league to auction. Mike Evans is going for 194. Julio is going for 156, and Odell Beckham is going for 202. And I'm not a big fan of the 202 bet because as he was getting bid up yesterday, he was about at 175. I told them that if he hit 200, I'd shit a chicken. And they are holding me to that. They want to see me shit a chicken. But, I mean, Dez is going for 176. Antonio Brown's going for 176.
Wow.
I mean, I can't. I'm not the ones bidding them that high. I mean, I'm all about having guys like that on your team, but I can't see spending almost a fifth of my budget on one player.
Yeah, that's kind of hard because you kind of have to balance your team out. You're gonna have a second wide receiver on your team. You're gonna have a running back on your team. You're also forgetting about QB. I mean, if you're focusing all your money on one slot, the rest of your team is gonna hurt.
Yeah, but I mean, if he pulls off Beckham, Evans, and Julio, that's a studly wide receiver position. I mean, you can almost afford to punt on quarterback and tight end, and then just pick up some upside running backs.
Yeah.
And still have a shot. I mean, I'm not gonna do it, but props to him for giving it a shot.
Yeah. It's a lot of money in just one position, though.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, it's $1,000 budget. I mean, he's still got like $400 to build the rest of his roster. I'd
be interested in how that team shakes out in the end.
I will too. Maybe I'll post up a link to the auction at some point. And
yeah, I think he should.
Yeah, it's just it's not as interesting as following along with a startup, seeing people bid up by $1 and stuff. It's not as interesting to follow along with. Okay, let's move on to our next thing is a subreddit post discussion, and it is knowing how much should knowing other owners' tendencies, particularly dumb owners, affect one's decisions in the draft. And this guy was talking about Dave, you want to go ahead and explain it better for me?
I think what it was is about trading and knowing who the dumb owners ahead of them are to maybe trade behind them because they could get better value. One reason why I picked this one up is it's always good to maybe know your owner's tendencies, particularly the dumb ones. If you know the dumb ones are going to be trading away their star QBs for a tight end that's like borderline sleeper, maybe you should look at it. It's good to know what your team owner, your fellow owners want and what they like sometimes, just because you kind of learn how to package your deals for them. You could get a lot of better value knowing that.
Yeah.
I'm lost. But what's your take on knowing the tendencies of your league mates?
I think it's in general more just than your dumb owners. I think it's good to know the tendencies of your league mates in general. Like,
That's
if
what I was trying to get at. That's why I brought this up is you should know your tendencies on your league mates.
right, that this is why it's so important to have good relationship with your league mates. Talking about prospects, knowing who they're high on, who they're low on, because it can allow you to make moves during the draft. Say I know the guy with the 101 pick is all about Melvin Gordon. He is locked and loaded 101 Melvin Gordon. That means I only have to trade up to 102 if I want to get Todd Gurley. you know. But if I didn't talk to my league, if I didn't know that, I'm sitting here trying to force myself into the 101 pick, and I can't do it. Or I end up having to pay so much more to get that 101 pick because, this guy's locked and loaded for Melvin Gordon. It's like this last year. One of my leagues, I knew that the guy at 106 was going to take Carlos Hyde. And instead of trying to trade up over him to get to 105, I was able to just wait till 107 to get Jordan Matthews. And it has a lot more effects than that, but I think these are just the most basic examples of knowing your league mates' tendencies. Knowing whether they'll, no matter what, they're going to take a wide receiver, whether they'll draft for need or they'll draft for talent.
Exactly.
If you know they'll draft for need, you can look at their roster and evaluate and kind of tell what position they'll take in the draft. Over, whether a team, if you know that they're going to draft for talent, then it's a lot harder to predict because you don't know what their draft board looks like.
Yeah. It's always good to know what your a general idea what draft boards look ahead of you, because then you can know, okay, do I really need to move up that far, or can I wait a little bit back and maybe trade for this pick, which I could get for cheaper than, say, the 103. That's pretty much the key, is you kind of get an idea, if you actually know your tendencies of your league mates, of how much you should pay and how much you really have to pay.
Exactly. And I mean, that's really it. I mean, I don't really have anything else to add to those points. I think that pretty much hit it on the head.
It's pretty much I do place an importance on knowing it. How much you really have to. I think it's really important. It's just not one of those. You're better off researching your game, researching the players. You're better off getting more knowledge in the area rather than knowing the tendencies. But I think knowing the tendencies does help you in the long run.
Yep, completely agree. And it helps with more than just drafting. It helps with trading. If you know that they lean towards a certain type of player, then you can automatically, you can attract them into negotiating with trade offers just by going after them with certain types of players. It's beneficial in more than just your drafting. And I think that's going to do it for that discussion. Let's go ahead and hit up this last subreddit post. This is another one you wanted to talk about. It was brought up by Chad Parsons from Under the Helmet, and it's TJ Yeldon is under the radar, but should he be? And I just I want to know your thoughts on it. You brought the post to us. I want to know what what your thoughts on it to bring it to us.
Well, a lot of it I want to see what your thoughts were. But overall, TJ Yeldon, he's a running back, of course. I think he's being overshadowed this year with Gurley and Gordon, even Amari Cooper, even though he's a wide receiver on this board. He probably is going to be under the radar. But being in Alabama running back, do you really want to pick him? What's your thoughts on Yeldon?
I'm not a fan of comparing him to other Alabama running backs, just because every player is different. The same idea with comparing different USC wide receivers. Even though all of them have been terrible, let them all be terrible on their own merits. Just like the Wisconsin running backs have been terrible, let them be terrible on their own merits. Yeldon to me is, there's parts of his game I like, but I'm not over the moon about the guy. There's a lot of these running backs that don't really do anything for me in this class. There's a lot of them I'm not interested in heavily investing in them, and TJ Yeldon's another one of those guys. He's probably my running back 5, running back 6 in this class. And I doubt he's going to fall to me. I think a lot of people are going to be higher on him than I am. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I feel like he regressed this year, and that's part of why I have the issues with him that I do. He's got good size. You know, he's fairly strong, but I haven't seen enough out of his game that really impressed me enough to want to draft him. And maybe maybe next week, we got to do running backs next week, because that's the next one on the list. Maybe we'll do TJ Yeldon, and we'll actually do this more in depth. But to me, he's just, Chad brought him up as, no one's really discussing him as the possible number 3 running back in this class, and I don't see it.
Now, let's talk about this running back class. Do you think this class is going to be on par to this year's wide receivers that we've seen? Do you think that's going to be the case, as everyone's kind of pumping it up as? Is the 2015 running backs going to be the 2014 wide receivers?
I think it's going to have nowhere near the upside, but I think the depth is going to be there. I think we're going to have the same amount of running backs that end up being successful out of this class, but in terms of how they turn out, I don't think we're going to have this. The amount of them that turn into running back 1s is going to be small. But I think the amount of them that can be used as starters as running back 2s or 3s is going to be much higher, is going to be on par with this 2014 class. See, the problem with comparing to this 2014 class is there's literally there's no draft class in history that has anything close to being comparable to this. So trying to immediately compare something to it is just a bad precedent to set. This class is deep, but there's not really any extremely good talent out of it. If there was, people would be pushing for more running backs to be drafted in the first round than Gordon and Gurley. And I'd be more impressed with some of them. Because I'm not excited about hardly any of these guys. But this class has a lot of depth to it. A lot of them are going to be very solid running backs. They're going to be able to give you running back 2 numbers, and they're going to stick around for a long time in the league. But, meh.
Meh.
Meh. And I think that about covers that. I guess it's time for my rant of the week.
Yes, rant away.
All right. Why the hell can I not think of anything to rant about this week?
Not enough people are pissing you off this week.
Seriously, I have been way too calm and peaceful this week, except for reading Deflategate comments. And that's not Dynasty related, so I wasn't going to rant about that. Why the hell do I have to podcast all by myself last week and just talk to myself and sound like a crazy person? Because Dave likes to sleep.
Yes, I like to sleep, okay?
Because Dave has a life and it gets busy. Ugh. Yeah, I'm just giving you a hard time, Dave.
Well, maybe moving forward you could do this podcast with someone else.
Ooh. Dave's mad. No, but on a serious note, Dave and I have talked about it, and I will probably be proceeding with a new co-host. Dave will be devoting more of his time to making the subreddit awesome for you guys. We're gonna be, partying it up here. It's early. It's early for Dave's time there. Dave works late, and this has been rough on him. So we're just Dave will still be joining us occasionally as our third man, and hopefully,
Or fourth.
yeah, we'll have a straight up round table in here. But there's gonna be some changes coming down the pipeline. But Dave, we're gonna miss you.
I'll still be around.
We know. It's all right. Because it's not like the subreddit's gonna. You're not gonna be around the subreddit. You're just not gonna be here to talk to me every weekend.
Yep.
It's all right. It's all for the greater good. As a side note, in case y'all missed the note, we are available on iTunes. If y'all have iTunes, get on there, give us a rating. Let people know how great we are or how sucky we are. If y'all hate us, if you hate us, I'm not sure why you're still listening all the way to the end. That's weird. We're available on Stitcher as well. And if you listen on Podbean, I lied when we started. I thought they had an app. They do not have an app that I can find. If somebody knows of an app for it, and y'all could send me a private message or a message on Twitter or something, letting me know what it is, I would appreciate that. And I think that's it for us. Dave, do you have any last parting shots for us?
That's about it. So far things have been great. I love the activity going on this weekend on the sub. Also, we also got a redirect from on the subreddit DFF. So if you actually go to DFF, it'll actually redirect to Dynasty FF. That's about it.
Yep. And we also have a sign up right now going for mock drafts for the subreddit. I'm going to be trying to run 2 of those simultaneously. Sticky Z's putting together ADP data for all the subreddit's mock drafts, and we're just trying to help contribute to that. I'm also going to run some 2QB mock drafts in the future, just because there's no 2QB ADP data out there. It doesn't exist. And I feel like that's something we can really contribute to the community with. So keep an eye out for that. If y'all do 2QB drafts, I'd really appreciate y'all participating in the mock drafts, because I can't do them by myself. I mean, I can, but then the data gets really skewed, and
It's just your idea of with the way things should be.
exactly. Then it's just my rankings, and why not just post my rankings then? But that's it for the Dynasty podcast. I've been Drew. You can find me on Reddit at EAF_Marine and on Twitter at DrewDawsonNFL. And with me has been my co-host Dave. You can find Dave on Reddit at MTux96 and on Twitter at DynastyDaveII. Y'all have a good day.